You are on the Scary Room channel, with you again, Peter Houston, and today is a true story from our friend Danny. We listen and watch.
Hi, I'm Danny. And I want to tell you a story that happened to me in childhood, and which I often remember. I was 13 years old at the time, and my parents and I lived in a private house. But that day my parents had to leave for work, and I had to stay home alone for the night. I often had to stay home alone. On Saturday at 8:30 p.m. I waved goodbye to them, and my parents got into a cab and drove away. I went into the house, closing the door just in case. I wandered into the living room and turned on the TV, which had cartoons on it. After I finished watching TV, I took a shower. Before going to bed, I liked to drink tea and cookies, but as I was drinking tea, breaking the complete silence, there was a quiet, hissing sound, and it quickly began to gain volume. I could not understand where it was coming from, but when I listened carefully, the source was found. The hissing sound was coming from a long dark corridor. Gathering all my will into a fist, I quietly and uncertainly walked out of the kitchen into the gloomy corridor, and at the end of the corridor, I saw the bathroom door slightly ajar. Slowly opening the door and turning on the light, I saw nothing. And the strangest thing was that when I opened the door, the sound was gone, but reappeared a couple of seconds later. It was the radio built into the shower cubicle, only the radio hadn't worked for a long time, and I hadn't even tried to turn it on when I was in the shower. I turned off the radio, and looking at one of the walls, I saw an open window. Our bathroom had a small window that was close to the ceiling, so no one could peep through it. I had to get a chair from the kitchen and stand on it to close the window, so I reached for the window and closed it. At that moment, a thought crossed my mind that the radio could have been turned on by a ghost, so I closed the window. Because our neighborhood was not the most prosperous, and there were often cases where burglars broke into a house in the middle of the night and even killed the owners of the house. After all this, I went to my room and fell asleep with these thoughts in mind. The next day at noon, my parents arrived. My mother quickly prepared dinner and called us to the table. My parents talked about the murder and robbery they had heard about on the news. First, my neighbor was tied up and beaten until he said where his savings was, then killed by cutting his throat. The robbers broke into his house, just through the open window that led to the backyard. And I suddenly realized that the burglars could have broken into my house through the open window. But I didn't say anything to my parents. This means only one thing. The ghost had come to my aid to keep the window closed so that a terrible event like my neighbor's would not happen to me. The ghost saved my life. Believe it or not. But it happened to me, and I now believe that ghosts are near us.
This is a true story that Danny told us today. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the horror stories from the people who lived through them.